The Shadow's Nightmare. An American Tale. Emily stared at her textbook spread across the coffee table, fighting against her heavy eyelids. The patriotic decorations in her living room, flags, eagles, and her proudly displayed college diploma seemed to mock her desperate attempt to stay awake. Through the window, the autumn wind whistled through bare branches, creating eerie shadows that danced across her psychology textbook. "Just a few more chapters," she mumbled, her head nodding forward. The soft glow of her desk lamp grew dimmer, and before she could resist, sleep claimed her. She jolted awake behind a counter, the acrid smell of stale grease filling her nostrils. Through the grimy windows of the abandoned McDonald's, moonlight cast twisted shadows across the checkered floor. The menu board above flickered with impossible items: McFear meal, terror nuggets, soul-crushing sundae. The prices kept changing, shifting between numbers and strange symbols that hurt her eyes to look at. "Welcome to McNightmare, darling. Today's special is your deepest fears." The voice seemed to seep from the walls themselves, dripping with malevolent glee. Emily spun around, her heart pounding against her ribs. Where a normal McDonald's employee should have stood, a figure made of writhing shadows materialized. Its edges blurred and shifted like smoke, but its eyes, two pinpoints of crimson light, remained fixed on her. This was Mr. Shadow. "This isn't real," Emily whispered, backing away from the counter. Her fingers gripped the edge of the register, cold metal biting into her skin. "Just a dream." "Oh, sweetheart." The figure rippled with dark amusement, its form dissolving into black mist that poured over the counter like liquid darkness. "This is more real than your precious American dream. Tell me, how many nights have you spent chasing that illusion? How many hours wasted pursuing a future that's nothing but smoke and mirrors?" The shadows began to take shape around her, forming snapshots of her life. Late nights studying, rejection letters from dream colleges, mounting student debt statements. Each memory twisted into a grotesque parody of itself. Emily ran. She burst through the kitchen doors, but instead of the expected storage area, she found herself in an endless school hallway. American flags adorned each locker, their stars and stripes melting like wax, dripping black ooze that pooled at her feet. The lockers began to shake, a thunderous metallic chorus that made her teeth rattle. "Did you think your education would save you from the darkness?" Mr. Shadow's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "How many others have walked these halls, believing the same lie?" The lockers burst open, spewing forth a torrent of shadow that coalesced into twisted shapes, diplomas that writhed like snakes, textbooks with gnashing teeth, graduation caps that fluttered like ravens. Each manifestation bore the face of someone she knew, classmates who'd dropped out, friends who'd succumbed to the pressure, professors who'd warned her about the real world. "This is my dream!" Emily screamed, her voice trembling despite her attempt at bravery. "I control this!" "Here, I am the American system." The shadows converged, forming Mr. Shadow's towering silhouette. His form now wore a suit made of broken dreams and failed aspirations. "And you've failed life's final exam." The hallway dissolved, reforming into a grotesque courtroom. The jury box was filled with mannequins made of pure darkness, their features constantly shifting and melting. Each bore a name tag: depression, anxiety, imposter syndrome, burnout. Mr. Shadow loomed from the judge's bench, his form now draped in a judge's robes that seemed to be woven from living shadows. "Court is in session," his voice boomed, echoing with 1,000 whispers. "The defendant stands accused of believing in the American dream. How do you plead?" Something snapped inside Emily. Years of determination, of fighting for her future, of proving everyone wrong, crystallized into a single moment of defiance. She grabbed the nearest American flag, which began to glow with an inner light. The shadows recoiled, hissing "No!" she shouted. "These are my dreams, my rules. You're not the system. You're the fear of it. And I refuse to let fear win." The flag in her hands blazed brighter, its light filling the courtroom. The shadow jury screamed, their forms dissipating. Mr. Shadow's figure began to fracture, crimson eyes widening in disbelief. "You can't defeat me," he snarled, his voice distorting. "I am every doubt, every failure, every—" "You're nothing but a nightmare," Emily interrupted, stepping forward. "And I'm done being afraid." The courtroom exploded in a burst of light. Emily's eyes flew open, sunlight streaming through her living room window. Her textbooks lay scattered around her, and the morning news played quietly on the TV. Her racing heart began to slow as reality settled back in. But something was different. On her coffee table, where her psychology textbook had been, lay a single sheet of paper. It was her latest exam, marked with a bright red A+. Next to it, written in shadows that seemed to shift as she watched, were the words, "You win this round, dreamer. But there are other dreamers, other fears. Sweet dreams." Emily smiled, picking up the exam. The shadow writing faded, but she knew it wasn't over. Mr. Shadow would return, seeking new victims, new fears to feed on. But she had learned something valuable. The only thing stronger than fear was the courage to face it. That night, as she prepared for bed, Emily placed her newly framed exam next to her diploma. Let the shadows come. She was ready. And somewhere in the darkness, crimson eyes watched, waiting for the next round in their eternal game. Days passed, and Emily noticed changes in her daily life. She spoke up more in class, challenged unfair practices at her part-time job, and started a student support group for others struggling with their own shadows. Her nightmare had taught her that the real American dream wasn't about perfect success. It was about facing your fears and helping others face theirs. Sometimes, late at night, she'd catch glimpses of shifting shadows in her periphery, hear whispers of that familiar voice. But now, instead of fear, she felt something closer to determination. Mr. Shadow had tried to break her spirit, but had instead forged it stronger. The last thing she did before going to bed each night was look at her reflection and smile, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, those crimson eyes were watching, perhaps with a hint of respect. After all, every nightmare needs its hero, and every hero needs their worthy adversary. And so the game continued, night after night, dream after dream. A dance between shadow and light, fear and courage, nightmare and dreamer. But now Emily knew the truth. Sometimes the most terrifying dreams can lead to the most powerful awakenings.